Hey everyone, Matt here from Herbal, and in this video we are taking a closer look at the latest HYDROFLO Gen 2. So this generation has seen a couple little improvements with the way the buckets are shaped and a few little adjustments to the pumps and filter system, but overall still a really robust and reliable system. So just keep in mind this is a 4+1 system, which means you have got 4 buckets or 4 pots for your plants, plus 1 as a reservoir. So a really simple system and easy to put together. Now, as you'll see, there's a few components here on the table. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these all off the table, get them on the ground and show you guys how the system goes together nice and easy. All right, so now that we've laid all the bits out here on the ground in sort of an appropriate manner, we've got all the PVC bits there, we've got the clay balls, we've got the air line and pump, just a really nice easy way to grab things as we need them. Now, one of the improvements we have noticed and definitely appreciate is the diagram itself is a lot easier to understand and helps give you an overview on how to put this whole thing together. But again, it's quite straightforward. So let's just start with the buckets themselves, or the pots. Now what you'll notice, and one you need to pay attention to, is there is one that does not look like the rest in the sense that it's got extra holes in it, and it is laid out so that the pump and this is effectively your reservoir. So just keep that in mind when you're setting things up. Now what we're going to do is just orientate this way, and we're going to lay out these pots around it and start assembling the main PVC components. Just like that is effectively how it's going to lay out. Now if we come down here, we're going to use these components here. So these are actually pre-tightened effectively. You're just going to loosen those off, removing the fitting. Now just keep in mind though, there are actually 2 seals on here. I'll just show you what that looks like. They're just stuck together. Pull that apart. So there are 2 seals. So you're going to want to make sure that one goes on one side and one on the other, and I'll show you what that looks like now. One seal on there, like so. Going to poke that through the fitting, and then you're going to put the seal on the other side, just like so. We're just going to tighten that on there. Now, surprisingly, hand tight does work fine, but don't worry if you haven't got the grip strength. If you've got some appropriate tools to just grab that and twist it, you'll be just fine. Easy as that. So what we're going to do is we're just going to repeat that on all of these fittings and assemble the core structure of this. Like so. One on the outside. Cool, we'll just move on to the other fittings now. Okay, so just one thing to note is when you're connecting the reservoir to either of the pots, there are actually 2 right angle fittings or assemblies to grab from here. Now, you don't want to grab the one that's got the straight pipe, you're going to want the one that has the 2 MAC unions, one on each end to seal on. This is going to be for down the other end, which is going to interconnect to a T and back to the water pump, but we'll get to that in a moment. Now, I will actually also mention the orientation you're going to want this. You're going to want this little hole here punched in the side. You're going to want that facing down the aisle between the pots, because that's where the inlet is going to be from the water pump, and it's quite easy to get it around the wrong way, and then you're just having to do more work than anybody ever wants to. Easy. Okay, well that was actually pretty easy and we didn't require too many tools there at all hand tight and should be leak free. So now we're on to the next part. So just down here, we're at the back side of these buckets. We're going to connect the return back to the water pump. So we've got these 2 parts here, which are going to get installed like so. Now they do actually recommend in the instructions you can use PVC glue here. We've found with these systems and the previous system, we've never needed to use glue and they have been leak free. So we're just going to put these in here. Sometimes you can give them a tap if you want, and that's going to make it nice and tight. So we're just going to line that up, get that one in there, tap that in there, and we've now got our T-piece for the return to the pump. So we're just going to tighten up these fittings into the bucket and then connect the rest of the hose. Alright, so now that we've got those fittings installed, before we move on to the feed line back to to the main reservoir, we're going to install the filters. So there are 2 of these. I'll show you where they go now. They're just going to go on the inside of these fittings here, on the inside of the bucket. So you're going to take one like so, and we're simply just going to push that in there. Now you don't need to push very hard because it is nice to be able to pull these back out to give them a clean or a service once you pull your plants and you need to give everything a nice wash down. It's really easy to just pop those out and give them a rinse, just like so. So now the system is completely filtered and we can move on to installing the feed pipe back to the reservoir, which same story as this. You're going to have this little spigot here, and again you can use PVC glue, but we find just pushing it in nice and firm works just fine. So with that in there like so, just going to go over to the other end, this one here. Same story as all the other fittings, just a little bit smaller. Loosen that off. Take one seal to go on the inside and one on the outside. And we're just going to tighten that up. Now this is a flexible pipe here, this black hose, so don't be surprised if you see a little kink in there. Don't stress about that. You can just rotate the pipe to suit to reduce the kink, but they do give you a little bit extra in there just in case you want to adjust the system. Okay, so now we're going to install the essential equipment in the reservoir here, which is of course the pump, the fill valve and the drain valve. Now just starting with the pump here, I'll just show you guys a little tip or trick with this pump. Good little hearty designed pump. These things are pretty darn bulletproof, but I'll show you if you just turn this counterclockwise, the front can come off and you can get in there to service it. So if you're like us, our showroom system, our old demo system, we've been running that thing for months without giving it a clean, and it can get a little scummy in there. So nice to know you can just pull this apart and give it a service if you start to lose that pump performance. So I'll just put this back together now. Easy as that. So starting with these fittings, we're going to put one on the inlet, which is just this one here. Now there is a little rubber seal, but because it's submersed, it's really not that much of an issue. Just hand tight that on there, not too tight. And then we're going to fit the T on the top. You don't have to stress too much on direction with this because it's just going to sit in there, and this is going to draw the water up that feed pipe and push it back into the reservoir. So I'll just drop that in there now. And that's just going to wiggle in there, nice and firm, and it is good to go. Of course you don't want the power lead in there, so let's just get that out. Easy as that. Now one nice thing about these buckets is they do actually have these little grooves in 2 of the corners, so you can feed power leads out and any other equipment you're putting in there, whether it's pH testers and the likes. Now that we've got that installed, let's put the fill valve in. So this is a ball cock valve, I believe they are called, commonly used in bathroom toilets because they allow you to hook up a feed line, and this will regulate how much water is going in the reservoir. So let's just put that in there now. Just going to loosen off the tap fitting. We've got one nut here. So in this case, we're going to have the rubber seal on the inside. I'm just going to poke that through the large hole here and tighten up the nut on the outside. Easy as that, hand tight. And now we've got the garden hose fill fitting here. Magic. So the way you can set this valve up is by simply loosening this little wing nut that's on the side and setting where you would like the height of the water level to reach, where it'll cut off. Now you don't have to use the system to actually fill your tanks or buckets, but it is nice and really easy to simply just hook up a hose, turn it on, and let the system modulate how much water is going in there. A really easy way to fill it. So now let's move on to the drain valve. Okay, so this drain fitting just simply uses a barbed fitting, and there is already a rubber grommet installed in the corner of the bucket here. So they do actually recommend using lubricants when you're working with these rubber grommets because they are pretty darn robust and hard to deal with when they are dry. So I'm just using a little bit of CRC oil that I've got here. Probably not the best for plants. I definitely recommend giving it a rinse if you are using any oils that aren't like a natural or vegetable cooking oil. But you're just going to wrestle with that, a little bit of pressure, and it's just going to pop in. So it's got a nice tight seal. And this drain valve here, I'm just going to put that in the closed position. So a really nice way to drain this entire system. You can just hook up a garden hose there, run it off outside, open up this fitting, and it'll naturally drain with gravity. Of course you could pump it out, but we find this is a really nice way to do it, of course. So once you've located your little bag of rubber grommets, just remember there is a very tiny little orange ball there, which is for this water level indicator, which we're now going to install on the reservoir. So on the back side here of the res, you're going to see a small drilled out hole, quite hard to see with the black plastic. We're going to start by installing a rubber grommet just in there now. So we find with these a little bit of lubricant does certainly help, but if you've got the finesse, you can kind of just wiggle it in there, give it a twist, and it should just pop in without too much fuss. Easy as that. So now we're going to install the water level indicator. Now this is a pre-assembled part. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get that fitting into the grommet. Easy as that. Now what we're going to do is take that little tiny orange BB ball looking thing, which I've got here in my fingers, I'm just going to drop that in the top. I'm just going to wiggle that underneath, and that is the water level indicator. So as we fill water in there, you'll see that little red or orange BB ball start to float up and give you an indication on the water level. Nice way to check it, of course. So what we're going to do from here is we're just going to install the last of these rubber grommets into the pots, which is just going to be for the air delivery system now. Okay, so now that we've installed the rubber grommets, we did actually notice they include one extra, which is nice, not complaining, just in case you lose one. But you will actually notice with these pots, there is one hole at the top there for this airline fitting, which we've installed the grommets in. You can decide which way you want that orientated depending on the location of your air pump. The way we've got ours, or are planning to have it set up, is with all of these pots facing each other so we can centralize the air pump and try and make it look as aesthetically pleasing as possible for the showroom unit. Let's actually move on to installing the air pump, which we've got just here. There is a rubber joiner piece with 2 clamps and of course a manifold or a distribution manifold here for the airlines themselves. Now, I'm going to install this rubber joiner piece. Now please note, one end is larger than the other. The small end here is going to go on the pump itself, like so. I'm going to install 1 clamp. Now these are a little fiddly because you've got to squeeze them down to open them up, like so. Just going to place that on there. I'm going to install the second one just a bit further down. Put the barbed manifold fitting on there, squeeze the clamp to open it up and release it when it's just on the fitting like so. Magic. So that is nice and tight, and we are ready to start installing some air lines. So what we're going to do from here is we are actually going to place this pump in the central location, measure out some air lines, cut them to the appropriate length. So in this particular case, we're going to be putting our air pump directly in the center. Now they do give you plenty of flexible air line here, so we're just going to measure it out to suit each pot. Now ideally, a really easy way to do it is you pretty much want this end of the hose touching the bottom center of the pot, so I'm just going to hold it down in there, run this over the top, get a ballpark length down to the air distribution manifold, and I'm going to cut it there. So that's one. Now I know the pots neck on the other side are going to be very much the same length, so I'm just going to pull that out, cut that to the same length. So now I've got 2 for the front pots, and then the rear pots, it's going to be very much the same story for measuring it out. Hold that down in there, run that out to there, so that's 1. And that's 2 with some left over. Cool, so now what we're going to do is we're going to install these air lines and of course put on the air stones. So you're going to see just back over here, we've got a set of air stones. So you're just going to use those fittings, push them on all the way, and that is ready to go. So an easy way to do this is to feed it back through. Now this is where lubrication is very important for these ones because they are actually pretty tight. So I'm just going to use a little bit of oil that I've got here to get that into the fitting, and we're just going to push that all the way through. Just leaving enough of the air stone just there in the base of the pot, just like that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat that to all 4 of these. Okay, so now that we've got the air stones in their location and of course the air hose run long enough to reach the pump, we're going to move on to the check valves. Now these are effectively a one-way valve, and it's important to install these if your air pump ever turns off. It helps prevent water being siphoned out through the air stone and down into the manifold and leak out of the bottom of your air pump. It can happen, and these air stones, or sorry, these check valves are there to help prevent that. So these are a one-way valve. Now there is a way you want to install them. So a good way to check which way they work is actually blowing into them. Really easy to do. So that gives you a good indication that they will only go one way. Try blow the other way, doesn't do anything. So the way we're going to want to install them is like this. So it means the arrowhead is facing away from the pump. Now, with that excess hose we've got, which is just the stuff here, we're just going to make some short little connections just to go on the back side to join it to the pump and hook up our air lines that we've already run to the air stones. So I'm just going to cut some small sections of this and install that now. Now with this plastic line, it can be pretty firm and put up a bit of a fight, but just keep in mind if it ever gets too tough to deal with, just soak it in some hot water and it will soften right up and make pushing it onto these fittings an absolute breeze. Easy as that. So now we're just going to push them onto the manifold down here on the air pump. Now what you'll actually notice is there are 4 open ports on this manifold, and you might not see it, but there are actually some black rubber caps here just blocking off these ones which aren't used. So keep in mind you can use these later on if you've got another project that requires air. Very simple to just pop these little rubber bungs off and you'll have an air delivery system. So now what we're going to do is just push these onto the manifold. Now in this particular case the hot water method's definitely worth considering because it is an extremely tight fit. There's one. Magic. Okay, so we've got all 4 check valves here installed, so now we're just going to hook up our air lines that we pre-run. We're just going to push onto the outlet of the check valve like so. That's 2, 3, and 4. So now we've got all 4 lines installed with the check valves where they need to be. And of course you can set this up to suit your needs, but this is how we're doing it for our showroom unit. Now we're nearly there guys, time to install the lids and pots. So what you'll notice is one of the lids is a blank, it effectively doesn't have a hole punched out. That is for your reservoir, pretty straightforward. So now you're going to have 4 of these here. Just going to drop those straight on top. Now you get to choose effectively which way you'd like the little access point, whichever suits you better of course in your layout of tent. So I'm just going to set these up like so, because I know which way we're putting this in our grow space. So it's easily accessible. From there, you're going to install the little flap access panels, which just simply pop in. Okay, so now, final step realistically before we put it in the tent is installing or putting the clay balls in, which you'll probably do with your plants anyway, but just a hot tip with any clay ball is to wash them first. So we're just going to give these a quick rinse and drain them, and then we're going to install them in these little wicker baskets here. We're going to put this in the grow space and show you guys what it looks like up and running. All right, so a real easy way to actually wash these, hot tip by Josh, thank you Josh, is we're going to cut the corner off this bag here using our showroom pruners. And basically that's just going to give it a nice drain point. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pop out the front of the shop here and we're just going to fill it with water and let it drain. So a really easy way to clear the dust off these clay balls, get them rinsed and ready to go. Alrighty, so now we've got the actual system set up in place. Now this is actually sharing a tent with our auto pots over on the other side, but of course this is just a demonstrator. This system will just squeeze into a 1.2, 1.2, but would realistically recommend this go in a 1.5 by 1.5 or even larger grow space if you're looking to use the full capacity of it. Keep in mind though, this is a really simple system with PVC piping, so you can make modifications if you have to. It's not rocket science to cut these pipes and extend them or even change the overall dimensions of this system, but straight out of the box, as you can see, it is a perfect 4+1 bucket system. A really nice tidy design. We do love seeing the improvements here. One little note I will mention if you are pulling this straight out of the box, and just over here if you take a look, this fill hose that goes to the water pump, this can get a bit creased as it comes out of the box. We've just set it up as is and it's okay, but if you do find that this is limiting the water flow out of your water pump down in there, you just want to remove that hose, warm it up to soften it and open it up a little bit more. A minor issue that you're probably not going to run into, but I feel like it's worth mentioning just if you're getting the system up and running for the first time. So we've just got our air pump in there. Now if I lift this off, you'll see we've got the air stone just bubbling away here. Absolutely perfect, so one per pot. We do have the access flaps, of course, for getting in there and testing pH and the likes, but for the most part, we're gonna just be putting the lid on the top here of this tank, and of course dosing in our nutrients there, checking our EC and pH, and just letting the system run full time. So a brilliant piece of equipment, and it's gonna do really well here. We're gonna set it up with a couple of tomato plants and let them absolutely run wild. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions at all regarding this product or anything else that comes to mind that we might have missed, please get in touch today. Thanks for watching.